Does society benefit from animal testing? Animal testing is described as the practice of testing drugs, cosmetics, and theories on animals in order to advance in a certain field. I've done a lot of research on this topic and plan to educate you on the pros and cons of animal testing, as well as present to you some of the alternatives. Numerous countries use animal testing for research purposes, but the United States is one of the top 3 countries that use animal testing the most. Looking at this chart, you can see all the different animals that are being used in animal testing. In the red, those are the most popular, which are rats, mice, fish, birds, and insects, and they use those primarily because they were sensitive to allergens, which is what they're testing for. It's just easier to test their tests on drugs, all of that. Today I will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of animal testing, as well as some of the alternatives. One of the main points include the mere fact that experiments that work on animals generally will fail on humans. Another point that I will be talking about is how inhumane animal testing can be. However, testing on animals has saved and improved millions of lives. Animal testing has benefited researchers in understanding how to treat various conditions, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and Parkinson's disease. There's a lot of evidence gathered from animal testing. Out of every test conducted on animals, only 1 out of 1,000 will work on humans. You may say this is an important figure, but when looking at all the animals being used, it's really a small percentage that will actually work on humans. In fact, only 0.1% of tests conducted on animals are effective on humans. When there's an experiment that produces positive results on animals, the same experiment will be given to a human and more than likely will fail. Alternatively, we could just use a liver from a deceased human or request human volunteers to conduct experiments on. These types of experiments are generally more effective and useful when deciding if the experiments will work on humans or not. Instead of using different kinds of animals, we could use human tissues or cells to discover cures for diseases. These alternatives would include sophisticated tests and advanced computer modeling techniques. This way, no harm is done to animals, and humans can potentially be cured for different diseases. Some people think of all the harm being done to animals when tests are conducted on animals. The pain and suffering that experimental animals are subject to is not worth any possible benefits to humans. The animals used in experiments do not have any choice but to participate in an experiment. They are just selected at random and injected with some type of chemical, drug, or infectious disease at levels that can cause illness, pain, suffering, even death. When looking at this chart, they usually test their drugs and all of that by the tail, where they're more sensitive to allergens, and then they will usually develop some type of tumor, and depending on the color, if it's red or green, it will determine if it passes or it fails. And then looking at these 2 charts, this is a pain tolerance of animals that they have to suffer from when they're being tested on or being bred to get more tests. So when they are being tested on just for drugs, tests, and all of that, they mostly are in the mild condition, moderate, but some are in non-recovery, which is severe brain damage and cannot function after that. And then on the right, this is a graph of the pain tolerance of animals when they're being bred, and they are also in mild and sub-threshold, which is almost to non-recovery, so they have some brain function, but not that much. Animals are tested for medical treatment, determining the toxicity of medications, and other biomedical, commercial, and healthcare uses. Scientists like to test on animals because they are most similar to humans in regard to their organs and blood. Testing on animals also is much more economical because it is extremely cheap to test on animals. Testing on animals also contributes to life-saving cures and treatments. So in summary of all the pros and cons and alternatives that I talked about, some of the pros are animal testing contributes to life-saving cures and treatments. Animals must be used in cases when ethical considerations prevent the use of animal subjects, and animals often make better research subjects than human beings because of their short life cycles. And then some of the cons are Animal testing is cruel and inhumane. Drugs that pass animal tests are not necessarily safe, and animal tests may mislead researchers into ignoring potential cures and treatments. And the alternatives that I talked about in my paper is scientists are able to test vaccines on human volunteers, and alternative testing methods now exist that can replace the need for animals. So when you hear about animal testing this year and in future years, think about both the pros and cons of animal testing as well as the alternatives. With a bit of research about this topic, you can be much more informed as well as be able to educate others. Thank you.